Hi folks, it is 7 on the dot and I've turned on the live stream, but I think we'll wait just a few minutes because I know parking's a little tricky. We've got another event going on in the building across the street. So if you happen to be watching this from home, go get yourself a cup of tea or something and we'll start in a couple minutes. Thanks. All right, folks, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm waving to the camera because I know we've got some people watching or going to be watching later. I did have a little brochure on your way in if you want to grab that, or you can grab it on your way out. It basically encapsulates what we're going to be talking about tonight, and for those of you who have a few years on as parents, you probably know a lot of this stuff already, but it's kind of good to have it all in one place. So I'm going to do what any good youth group leader would do at this point. I'm going to make you talk to each other before we do anything else. So here's the deal. If everybody on that side of the room could just find out who you all are, ask if you've been on the trip, if your kid's going on the trip for the first time, anything you want to know about each other in the next, say, 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm going to ask this side to do exactly the same. So just kind of swivel around, say who you are, and what kid you're affiliated with. I'm just going to give you a second. Alrighty, go for it. always feel bad when I start these moments and then have to interrupt them, but just for my own curiosity, how many of you are first-time ASP parents? Never had a kid go on this trip before? Okay, bunch. We do also have some veterans in the room that I'll be calling on later when we do a little question and answer. I'm looking at you on Singapore back there in the back row. Let me ask another question. How many of you went on this trip with me and babysat my children when you were a teenager? Yes, Meg, very excited. That gives you an indication of just how long I've been doing this. We've got the next generation coming around again, and that's very exciting for me. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm just going to give you an overview of the trip and definitely leave room at the end for your questions, which I'm sure you have. And at least part of the goal tonight is simply for you to feel comfortable for where you're sending your child this summer. And if I'm really good, maybe even entice a few of you to come along with us. That is my dastardly plan. So you can be thinking about that as we go along. We're going to start off just by telling you a little about what this thing is that we're a part of. What is ASP, the Appalachia Service Project? It all goes back to this gentleman who I never had the pleasure of meeting. I'm old, but I'm not quite old enough. This is a fellow who was a pastor in eastern Kentucky named Glenn Evans, nicknamed Tex, and Tex Evans' name kind of lives in legend in ASP land. And he had this great idea. He realized that he had two things going on at once. He had poverty all around him, and he had a bunch of teenagers in his church who wanted to do something meaningful. And he had this notion, which was actually pretty radical at the time, that instead of sending kids off to kind of the usual summer church camp where they'd play volleyball and go swimming, he would create maybe something that would allow them to do meaningful work. And it was his notion that he could take teenagers and have them fix houses. This was met with a fair amount of incredulity. He was a United Methodist pastor, and he went to the Methodists asking for funds, and their first reaction was, "You'll never get teens to do that." And he said, "Try me." And they gave him a little seed grant to get going, and sure enough, in the summer of 1969, he got a bunch of kids from his youth group to go and fix homes in rural Kentucky. And their experience of being able to help people in such an incredibly tangible and meaningful way was so powerful that they said, "We have to do this again." And that's how the Appalachia Service Project was born, with just a handful of kids and a pastor who had this notion. All these years later, ASP is now a very large nonprofit organization that serves all over central Appalachia, West Virginia, Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. In the past, we have had some groups go to Kentucky and Tennessee, but more recently, we've honed in on helping West Virginia and sometimes southwestern Virginia. Thousands and thousands of kids come from all over the U.S. Oops, I got ahead of myself. Thousands of kids every summer come to the Appalachia Service Project to serve people in need in those 4 states. And it's over the entire summer. I'll say a little more about that later and how we fit into that. But it's gone from that one little vision of a youth group doing some hands-on work to thousands of kids from all 50 states coming and lending a hand. I happen to have the privilege of serving on the Appalachia Service Project board, having brought groups to ASP for literally decades at this point. They asked me to join the group that oversees the whole organization, and that has been a thrill and a privilege. Several times a year I get to travel down to Johnson City, Tennessee, and help think about how the program will go and the tweaks we can make. And I have the distinct honor of serving with the president of ASP, the CEO, a wonderful woman named Melissa Winburn. And what you're about to see is a video that's literally 5 days old that Melissa and her staff put together just to give people a sense of what ASP is. It's all of 4 minutes long, and I thought this is perfect to show the parents at the parents' meeting just so you can get a sense of what is this organization. So I'm going to stop talking and let you watch Melissa and the gang.
There's a real housing crisis in this country, and the reality is the housing stock is not keeping up with the demand. When a home goes into disrepair, the ability for a family to be able to take care of that on their own is sometimes impossible. The reality is construction materials are expensive. Construction labor is expensive. And the know-how that it takes to do it right is not something that every individual just has within their own family.
Our roof leaked really bad. I mean, like a garden hose coming out of a light. I had it patched, but patches don't work.
You know, families come up with creative solutions when things aren't working properly. I met a woman once who had been cooking on a hot plate in her living room for 3 years because of an electrical fire that made her kitchen unusable. The ability to fix that kitchen went beyond her resources, and she just needed some help from her friends.
Across Central Appalachia, substandard housing is a serious issue, and ASP comes alongside families that are affected and provides a partnership in a sensitive, caring, and loving way.
ASP has a God-sized goal. We envision the eradication of substandard housing in Central Appalachia. To do that, we provide critical home repairs, we build new homes, and we rebuild after a disaster has struck.
I really needed your help. I really needed God, not only for that, but just for me. I was at a point of where, God, please, I need to know you're with me. I need to feel you're with me.
They did me a roof, and next thing you know, they're doing me a ramp, steps, and that's the first time in 2 years I've been able to walk up and down my steps because they was far apart, and I can't fix that stuff. I'm not able. And that ramp's gonna be the greatest. This is the greatest.
At the end of the day, this kind of work is not just about construction. It's about relationships formed. When volunteers come meet their Appalachian neighbors, they see more than just the repairs. They're able to put their faith into action, and they walk away with hearts that are transformed by the movement of God in these mountains.
I just have a totally changed perspective because of this. See, Crystal, I've never left you. That's what God said. He wrapped me up in his arms and said, I've never left you. I'm very thankful.
When we first got here, I didn't really know at all what we were going to be doing or any construction, so I was a little nervous. But the people that I'm working with, it makes it so much better. It's a lot of fun, and I got to talk to Miss Karen, and she had tears in her eyes talking about just how thankful she was. It just warms my heart to be able to put smiles on people's faces and be the hands and feet of Jesus and get to shine that light.
ASP has exposed me to different people, different types of people, different norms that other people have, and that's changed my view on the world.
The need is great in this area for improving substandard housing, and there's also need for people in this area to understand there are people that care about them. They are not forgotten. They are seen, they are heard. They're very precious people.
ASP provides a place where faith meets action, neighbors serve neighbors, and homes are made warmer, safer, and drier.
So that's what we've been a part of for a very long time. This church first started participating with ASP in the summer of 1978, and again, I'm old, but not quite that old. I inherited this program when I came, and the story I like to tell is that when I came here as a pastor in 1989, a bunch of kids from SPF, because SPF goes back many decades, sat me down and said, you can do whatever you want, you can change whatever you want, you can come up with any ideas you want. The one thing you cannot change is ASP. It's what we do. And so that has been true since 1978. This will be, as it says, our 48th ASP mission trip. And that's why you've got people in the room who went with me years ago and now have a child going on the trip. We've been doing this a long time. So why do we? There are plenty of churches that switch it up, maybe do an international mission one summer and something else the next summer and rotate things around. Why do we do exactly the same thing every summer? Well, I just grabbed a few quotes that I heard from the kids. You know that when the kids register for this trip, they have to give me a sense of why they want to go, what they want to be a part of, and these are some of the things I heard. The friendships I've made on these trips are still so special to me. I find myself reflecting on the connections I made with my homeowner. I really felt like we were helping to improve the lives of other people. It was really cool. When I went on ASP last year, I have never felt closer to God. I hear that from a lot of kids, and you might be thinking, maybe not my kid, You'd be surprised how much their hearts are opened and their spirits are opened simply by being a part of this experience. And what I hear all the time, it was one of the best experiences of my life. And I'll tell you the truth, when I first started doing this trip, it was before I had kids. And I'd hear these kids saying this was life-changing, it was the best week of my summer, I'll never forget it. And there was a part of me thinking, like, are they just telling me that because that's what they want me to hear, that's what they think I want to hear? And then my own teenagers went on the trip, and they came back from the experience and said, Mom, it's the best week of my life. I'm a changed person. I can't believe how much I learned in 1 week. And I realized, no, this is real. So what actually happens on this trip? I'm just going to give you a little walkthrough of what your kids will be experiencing. On Saturday morning, bright and early, June 27th, we'll be down at Fairfield University. God bless them, the Jesuits down there. Give us a parking lot to use because we're a lot of people and a lot of buses and a lot of vans, and there aren't too many places in town that we can go hang out. For a lot of years, we met right up here at the church, and those were years when we were taking one bus and maybe a couple vans, but our population has exploded. We are, as you'll hear shortly, over 300 people, and that takes a lot of maneuvering. So we'll meet down at Fairfield U. The kids will get on their buses, and meanwhile, a bunch of our adult leaders will be going down the East Coast, picking up vans basically from here to Virginia. It takes a lot of enterprise locations to get the 47 vans that we're going to need this summer. So while the kids are traveling in coach bus luxury, we've got adults who are zipping along, dropping in at different places, picking up their vans. And we all meet up by hook or by crook at the end of the day at James Madison University, which is kind enough to host us every year, a great place to hang out. Way back when, we stayed at Roanoke College, and way back even before that, we would actually stay in a local church. But again, because of our numbers, we outgrew all those locations, and now we take over a dorm or two at JMU, and we get fed really good food, and they have nice showers, and I tell the kids to really appreciate those moments. That night, we all gather, all 300 and some of us, and I give my little ASP pep talk, welcome them, try to assuage any nervous kids in the room. And at that same meeting, we divide up into our work crews. This is the first time that the kids get to see who it is they'll actually be working on a home with. And I don't know if you can tell from this picture, but everybody's always really nervous in these first get-togethers with their crew. You take another picture 24 hours later, and they're acting like they've known each other forever. And if you know a child who's gone on this trip, or maybe yours has, you'll hear them talk about how much it means to them to bond with their crews. So that first night, first time they sit down with their crews. So let me say a little bit more about them, since they're such an important part of this trip. Each crew is 5 kids and 2 adults, and this year we have 45 crews going on the trip. So do some quick math, that's 315 folks. A very important characteristic of the cruise, which I learned probably year 1 that I was doing it, the crews are a mix of kids who don't already know each other. Different schools, different grades, different genders. And for the kids who are going on this trip for the first time, that sounds really scary. And it actually is kind of the heart and soul of the trip. And the reason, and once I explain it to them, I think they all catch on. The reason is that we're avoiding cliques this way. It's not like you're going to land on a crew with 3 kids who already know each other and have been hanging out since kindergarten. You're with 4 other kids who also don't know each other. So whether you're a senior on your 4th trip or a freshman on your 1st, you're all kind of starting from the same spot. As it says here. Everyone's in the same boat, a bunch of people getting to know each other for the first time. And if you happen to be thinking about going on this trip or have maybe signed up as an adult, I never put parents and kids on the same crew. I did that my first year and realized right away that didn't work so well. Even with the best intentions by parent and kid alike, it throws off the kind of balance of the whole crew. Ask my daughter if you ever run into her about the time. Of course, my kids were cursed with having me, leading the whole thing, so they had to put up with me. And I dropped by my daughter's work site just to see how things were going, and I was thrown off in 5 minutes after I said, "Honey, I told you that's not how you hold a hammer." That was it. So I know firsthand, a little tough to have a parent hovering. All right, so that's the first night of the trip. The next day we all gather next to our dorms and we have worship together outside. And we've been lucky. How I can't believe this always happens. It never rains on us. I really shouldn't have said that out loud, but we always gather for worship outside. We have a couple little traditions at that worship, including the blessing of the hands. Each child's hands are blessed for the work ahead. And then we head off to our work centers. Each of those work crews piles into their own vehicle, all those vehicles that our adults spent the whole day the day before picking up. And off we go to 4 different locations. And the reason for that is because ASP's work centers, where they bring kids from all over the country, can only hold about 80 people each. So they run 18 centers all over Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, and most church groups that come are in the 30 or 40 number. So there's usually 2 or 3 churches in each work center. We show up with 315. So again, a quick mathematical calculation. There's really nothing they can do except split us into 4 centers. So an important thing, and I always reassure the kids of this, they will get the chance this spring to give me the names of some kids that they'd really like to be in the same center with. I always tell them I can't guarantee that they'll be with everyone they asked for, because a big piece of the trip, as I just said, is mixing people up and having the crews be different folks. But I do make sure they're at least with one friendly face and often with 2 or 3 or 4 of the folks that they asked for. So at the centers, we get there on that Sunday, June 28th. We settle in. It's often a school that we're staying in, sometimes a community center. We had a couple groups last year that were staying in churches that opened up their Sunday school rooms and their halls. And this is a relatively neat sleeping area, I have to say. I don't see any candy on the floor, and dirty clothes appear to be in garbage bags, so I chose my pictures wisely, but this is essentially what it looks like. Each center is staffed by 4 or 5 college students who are on staff for ASP all summer, and they're the ones that pick the projects the kids will work on, that go over the construction skills, that make sure there's food for breakfast and dinner, and they do a lot of work. We've had a number of our own SPFers take a turn as ASP staff, and to a person they say that it's an incredibly rewarding and incredibly hard summer. These guys do a lot of work, so one of the things I emphasize to our kids is be nice to these folks. They are working hard to make sure you have a great experience. And then from Monday to Friday, this is what it looks like. The day starts around 7:30 or so. There's morning devotions. Everybody gathers together for a little inspirational thought for the day, and breakfast that's served by the staff at the center. Then the crews pack up their sandwiches. There's usually a lot of peanut butter. If your child happens to have a peanut allergy, they're very good at working with that. Just want to assure you of that. And then everybody piles into their vans and heads off to their work site where they're going to be helping a family in need. A little about how these homes are chosen. All year, this is already going on now. Families in need apply to ASP to be considered for summer repair. And at our first orientation, which the kids will have at the end of the month, I'll be actually giving them some of the applications, real applications that have been submitted in years past, just to give them a sense of what it's like, what a family might be coping with to be driven to apply to ASP. And they'll see things like this on the applications. I have 3 children at home. My daughter shares a room and a bed with me. My 2 sons share a little room and a bed. It would be a blessing to have more room. Rain falls in the lights fixtures, the ceiling is falling, it's leaking bad. There are 3 windows gone in the bedroom. Or this one, I'm disabled, my monthly bills are this, listed out. I've had back surgery, I need to have knee surgery, I can't do the needed repairs. Each application has a story like this that tugs at your heart, and for the kids to read through those really gives them a sense of why it's important to do what we're doing. So then ASP has to go through and pick the applications and pick the homes that the kids will be working on. And what they look for is projects that are doable for a bunch of high schoolers. So if there's a home that needs complete rewiring and complete plumbing installation, realistically, a bunch of kids for 7 weeks in the summer aren't going to be able to tackle that. So they pick what kids can do, and just to give you a sense of what that might be. Here are a couple crews that sided the heck, or insulated the heck out of a trailer home, and then they went back and put siding all over that insulation. Got a lot of ramps, as you gathered from the video that you saw, incredibly important for folks who are disabled and literally sometimes can't get in and out of their homes without aid. There's a lot of interior work, sheetrocking, painting. I'm standing there. I just want to tell you that I actually did no work at all, but I was there for the photo. My job on ASP is to drive around to all the crews. So I put a lot of miles on my vehicle. My goal every year is to see each and every one of our crews in action. I've come real close every summer, but there's always some place where my GPS fails and I can't find that last home up the holler. But my goal is to see each and every one of your kids and keep an eye on them. And a fair amount of roof work, and I know parents sometimes are a little leery of roof work. That's actually why I put this picture in. This is pretty typically the kind of roof that we're working on, a roof over a trailer home, so not too far off the ground. We're not working on our 2 or 3 story palatial estates. We're doing pretty simple roof work. And these guys were putting in a whole new set of footers and pilings for a new room, and it sort of looks like they're, manning a battering ram of some sort, but that was a pretty heavy 6x6. It's also really, really important, and you may have caught this in the video when Melissa said it's not just the home repair, it's the relationships that we're building, and that's a crucial part of the ASP experience. In fact, it's often been said on ASP that it's a relationship ministry with housing on the side. And that is very much the spirit that we enter into this with. We tell the kids it's as important to get to know the families that you're serving as it is to do the work. And obviously we want both things to happen, but we want the kids to have an experience of meeting people where they are, getting to know them, and what you'll find is that then inspires them to work really hard. When you're actually sitting with a family with a couple kids on whom the rain falls at night when they're trying to sleep, you've suddenly got a lot of motivation to get some work done with them. I've got this picture of, and this woman was so marvelous. I actually preached a sermon on her, the woman in the pink shirt, and she had the capacity for love like I've never seen. She genuinely loved each and every kid who came to her house that summer, and the kids all fell in love with her. And in fact, I did a whole sermon on the importance of taking the time to just sit and be with people and to hear their story, because my story was, I already told you that my job is to rush around and try to see all the crews at work, and that means that I'm constantly on the move. I got to this home, I spent a few minutes, I took some pictures of the kids, I was headed out the door, and she said, sit down and keep me company for a while. And an hour later, I finally moved on to the next home, and it was a wonderful reminder to me that I needed, that it is the relationships that make ASP what it is. And you can just see the love in that room. Then it's back to the center about 4 o'clock each day, and the kids do have chores, something that you might want to emphasize to them too. I always try to sneak that into our orientation. They'll be responsible for doing things like dinner dishes or mopping the hallways or the dreaded cleaning of the bathrooms. And that's because ASP doesn't spend any money on cleaning services or anything like that. They count on the kids who come to take care of their community. After dinner, after chores, there's time to get that shower, and then there's always something called evening gathering, which is getting everybody together to talk about their day, to reflect together, and sometimes just to hear some local culture. A little bluegrass music is always balm for the soul. They do also have plenty of time just to hang out, and when you hear kids talk about making friends on this trip, it's in moments like this, when the chores are done and dinner's over and evening gathering is ended, and you discover that there's really nothing more fun than sitting around playing cards with a bunch of people. What I really love is when the cell service is terrible. And each year we go back, there's a little more cell capacity in West Virginia, and that's great for the folks that live there, obviously. But my hope, my secret hope every time is that they'll be in a center with not a lot of cell service, because the truth is the kids will say at the end of the week, it was great, I wasn't on my phone, I played cards with my friends. So these kinds of scenes warm my heart. And before we know it, it's the end of the week. We pile back into our vans, head back to James Madison, get back on the buses, and head on home. It is quite a sight seeing six DATCO buses and a bunch of vans headed up. And here is my guarantee, and I feel pretty confident saying this to you. By the end of the week, your kids will have had a life-changing experience. So that's a very, very rapid trip through the week. And now I'm just going to spend a few minutes saying, what we look to you for. That was a complicated sentence. As parents, what do we need from you? That's an easier way to say it. You've already heard me say, and I do mean it, consider coming on the trip with your kid as an adult. It is a very intense adult-youth ratio that's required by ASP. I have to come up with 2 adults for every 5 kids to form those work crews. So again, 45 crews, that means we need 90 adults to go with us this summer. Right now I have 30 signed up. I'm not panicked because I know the other 60 are headed my way, but it would help my consumption of Maalox if those 60 showed up sooner rather than later. And it is, it's also something that older siblings can do if they're over. ASP's minimum age is 19. Ideally, we love to have kids who are 21 or older so they can help drive those rental vans. But if you've got a college-age older sibling who wants to be a part of what their younger sibling is doing, this is a great way to do it. We also rely pretty heavily on folks in the community. Every year we have teachers who join us, people who maybe went on the trip in the past and just want to be a part of it again. So help spread the word. One thing I want to assure you is that you do not have to be a construction guru. I mean this when I say it. I just love having people who are willing to spend a week with teenagers, helping them to have a great experience. So you can be right there figuring out how to do a roof alongside them. And so don't let that scare you off. The next thing that we could use your help with is support of our big event, which is coming up on, it says March 15th. That is not correct. I must have drifted over from an old slide. March 27th is the date. You'll be getting the invitation soon, but you've probably already seen a letter go by. This is our one and only group fundraiser for the trip. As it says, the trip actually costs around $240,000. We get about half of that, a little less, from the fees that the kids pay, and the rest of it we figure out through donations and through this event. So a way to support us on that event is donating items for us to auction off, coming and having a good time, bidding on the items that somebody else put in, or just making a donation. And what we don't cover from our fundraisers, Greenfield Hill Church does help to underwrite this trip, and it all works out in the end, but we do rely pretty heavily on that March 27th event. And this is definitely an old slide because it says go to ASP 2025. Don't do that, ASP 2026. And the last thing you can do, we are always grateful to receive vehicles to travel with us. If you're going on the trip and can bring your own vehicle, that's awesome. If you want to loan us a vehicle for a week, and yes, every year there are some brave souls that do that, we have discovered ever since COVID that it is harder and harder to line up enough large vehicles. And pre-2020, we could call Enterprise and say, we need 47 15-passenger vans, and they'd say, no problem. Now it's a lot more difficult, and so we're grateful for anyone who wants to loan us a vehicle. Also helps, obviously, save some rental fees. And the last thing is you can just help us by making sure your kids are prepped for this experience. The first is to kind of talk through with them. This is a faith-based organization. ASP's mantra is that they are a Christian organization open to all people, which means that people of all faiths and all religious backgrounds are very, very welcome to participate in ASP. But it is a faith-based experience in the sense that we'll be doing morning devotions. We'll be talking about God calling on us to serve one another. You could catch that also just in the video that you saw. So to share with your kids a little bit that they'll be thinking about God, they'll be encouraged to think about God, and whatever they bring spiritually, which I know is a vast and wide array, is very welcome. They will be part of a community, as you've already heard me talking about. The centers depend on everybody working together, so just reminding them that sharing in those chores is going to be important. Listening to whatever rules are given. Often we're staying in schools where perhaps the principal has said, okay, you can use all the 7th grade rooms, but the 8th grade rooms are off limits, or whatever it might be, and just making sure that we honor the space. I'll be talking to the kids about that too. And they will be expected to work, and that seems kind of obvious. It's a service project trip, but usually somewhere around Wednesday it hits kids that, whoa, this is kind of hard. So just talking with them about how they are making a difference to somebody else by the work that they do. And what I tell the kids when I meet with them is that you will feel so good about yourself on Friday if you know that you poured yourself out on the field and you did all you could to help these families. And that's about it. Most importantly, as it says, I'm so grateful to you for letting your kids be a part of this. It is an amazing tradition, not just in this church, but at this point in Fairfield. It is very cool to me just to be out having coffee somewhere and have somebody come up and say, hey, I went on that trip with you 15 years ago. Hey, my mom went on that trip with you. It's very much a community experience. There are literally thousands of people in this area that have participated, so thank you for letting your kids be a part of something pretty magical. Alrighty, I have talked nonstop for 40 minutes, which is kind of like a preacher's dream. We love to talk, but I do want to pause and just see what questions there might be before we let you go on home and watch the Olympics. And as I said, there are some other folks in the room who have been on this trip before, so if there's a question that I can't answer well, I'm going to call on them. Any worries, wonderings? Yeah.
You talked about the kids not being with their buddies and all that stuff. If you volunteer as a parent, are you with your child, or did I miss that part?
Great question, and I mentioned that you wouldn't be on the same crew, and I should have said more of that. What I always do, unless there's some reason not to, is to put for anybody watching the live stream, I should repeat the question was, are parents and kids together at all? So parents and kids are normally placed in the same center, so you see each other in the morning and the evening, you can hang out at meals, as much as your child will let you do that. The only thing you don't do is work on the same actual work crew, but you get plenty of quality time together. Thanks for asking that, and I should have made that a little more clear. Oh, you're a trusting bunch. Surely there are some worries. Yeah, Sean.
Are there some kids who go who don't have buddies that they're asking to be with and stuff, that they haven't really met a lot of people yet?
The question was, are there kids who go who don't have a bunch of buddies that they're signing up to be with? And absolutely. And one of the things I like about the way we do this trip is that, as I said, each crew is a bunch of people who don't know each other. So if your child happens to be going on this trip with 2 people they know, 1 person they know, absolutely nobody they know, they will end up being mixed in with kids that they will automatically have a connection with. And I've had plenty of kids go who were going solo like that. To be honest, it's nicer for me because I have the freedom to just mix them around and know who I kind of pay attention to who I think they might like to be with. I've also had kids who have said, I've got friends going on this trip, but you know what? I'd like to meet some people I don't know, so you don't have to put me with all the people I already know. Why don't I, put me someplace where I'm going to meet a bunch of new people. I had a kid a couple years ago who turned in his friend request form, and all it said was, whatever. And and he meant it. He just wanted me to throw him in wherever the spirit moved me. And those kids have great experiences. They make connections they weren't expecting to make. So great question. Yeah.
Can you just elaborate a little bit on the sleeping situation?
Yes.
Time, like the whole thing. Who's in what room?
Right. So couple different, the question was, how does the sleeping arrangement work? The typical scenario is that we're in a school where they have 6 classrooms set aside for our use. 3 for the guys, 3 for the girls. In each classroom there have to be at least a couple adults so that we don't just pack a room full of 20 kids and no supervision. So the adults are spread out to keep an eye on them, and the kids are typically they're on different floors of a school or different wings of a school. Occasionally, and this happened in a couple spots in the past couple summers, we were in a school last year where everybody was in a gym together. But by together, I mean they were sharing the same gym, but there were dividers down the middle of the gym, which were carefully monitored, shall we say. So the guys were on one side and the girls on the other. And the nice thing about the intensive adult-child ratio that ASP insists on, 2 adults for every 5 kids, is you've got a lot of adults keeping an eye on all those kids. So I that probably answered more than you wanted to know, but that's, yeah. Yeah.
If one did choose to drive, how big of a vehicle would you need?
I'm sorry, one more time.
If one chose to drive down, how big of a...
Oh, right. If you choose to drive, and we do have it has to be able to carry 7 kids. We do take cargo vans with us that can offload some of the luggage. So if you're in a minivan or something that can't carry 7 people's worth of tools and luggage, likely, we do have other vehicles that have room. So, but at least a minivan. We've got anywhere from a minivan to a Suburban is great as long as we can get 7 seat-belted people in there. I forgot to repeat the question on that, but I'm sure whoever's watching this figured out the question was the size of the vehicle. Thank you all. If there's a question lurking in the back of your mind and you just don't want to shout it out in front of a bunch of people, I'll be hanging out up here. And please feel free to come and ask me anything you want. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. And again, thank you for loaning your kids to us for a week. They are going to have an amazing experience. And most importantly, they're going to do a lot of good. A lot of people are going to be helped. Whenever I hand out those applications for the kids to look at, I say, think about this. Somewhere out there, there's a family that's waiting to meet you. And that's really at the heart of this. All right. Thank you. Take care.